A ver, en cuanto me digan. Bueno, bienvenidos, bienvenidas a Casa Árabe. Muchas gracias por acompañarnos una vez más en este viaje al mundo árabe que es Aula Árabe Universitaria. Disculpad el retraso, porque empezamos un poquito más tarde porque ha habido un problema con los intérpretes, no va a haber interpretación y le vamos a pedir un esfuerzo al ponente para que en lugar de en francés de la charla en inglés, que entendemos que probablemente la mayoría de vosotros lo entenderá. Así que lanzamos en el canal de YouTube también saldrá en español, inglés. Y nada, disculpad las molestias y muchas gracias sobre todo a Sebastián por hacer el esfuerzo de realizarlo en inglés, que lo tenía preparado en francés. Pues nada, comentaros que en esta novena conferencia del ciclo de Aula Árabe Universitaria vamos a continuar el viaje que hicimos la semana pasada para recorrer. En su momento hicimos un recorrido la semana pasada sobre las políticas medioambientales del Mediterráneo y vamos a seguir analizando lo que son las consecuencias del que el cambio climático está teniendo en la región, pero hoy vamos a hablar en particular de lo que es uno de los principales desafíos socioeconómicos para la región, que es la cuestión de la inseguridad alimentaria. Y lo vamos a hacer de la mano de Sébastien Abis, director del Club Demeter, investigador asociado en el Instituto de Relaciones Internacionales y Estratégicas. Y nada, antes de nada, muchísimas gracias, Sébastien, por acceder a la invitación para estar aquí hoy con nosotros y hablarnos de los países árabes, una inseguridad alimentaria en ciernes y sobre todo, como le decía, por el esfuerzo adicional de cambiar de francés al inglés. Se trata de una sesión que hacemos, que organizamos en colaboración con el máster en Political Science and Public Affairs de la St. Louis University, Madrid Campus, y también con el máster de Inteligencia Económica y Geopolítica de la Escuela de Inteligencia Económica y Relaciones Internacionales de la Universidad Autónoma de Madrid. Y nada, muchísimas gracias a los dos programas por la colaboración, por este esfuerzo de cooperación interuniversitaria, que es lo que un poquito el objetivo que intentamos desde Aula Árabe. Y en su representación contamos con Bara Mikhail, que es el profesor de Ciencia Política y Relaciones Internacionales de la St. Louis University, que va a presentar el ponente, y también a Ángel Rodríguez García Brazales, director de la Escuela de Inteligencia Económica y Relaciones Internacionales, además de director del máster y profesor de Análisis Económico de la Universidad Autónoma de Madrid. Así que nada, también agradecerles. Bueno, Ángel va a hacer un primer comentario de reacción luego, después de la charla, antes de luego abrir el debate con las personas y los estudiantes que estéis aquí en la sala, tanto como los que estáis siguiéndonos desde Internet. Entonces, por mi parte, agradeceros también a los dos la colaboración una vez más en este ciclo. Ya son varios años los que venís colaborando. Y bueno, antes de pasar la palabra a Bara, voy a recordar un par de cosas sobre lo que es la organización de lo que es Aula Árabe Universitaria. Como sabéis muchos de vosotros, se trata de un ciclo de conferencias anual que organizamos con los programas universitarios de Madrid y de Córdoba, que son las ciudades donde tenemos sede, además de otras universidades de ciudades cercanas. Entre ellas este año colaboran programas universitarios de Castilla-La Mancha, de Alcalá de Henares y también de Segovia. Y bueno, es un ciclo de conferencias que montamos a partir de las propuestas de sugerencias de temas y ponentes de las mismas universidades, con el objetivo de enriquecer y sus programas universitarios con temáticas y de la mano de expertos internacionales de renombre como el que nos acompaña hoy. Y bueno, con también el objetivo de acercar y conocer las realidades y las dinámicas que están viviendo los países árabes a distintos niveles y con temáticas relacionadas siempre también con los países árabes. Y por supuesto es un espacio también bueno, pues para crear espacios de intercambio y análisis y también romper disciplinas y que bueno, pues estudiantes de unos programas podéis venir a las conferencias de otros y de este modo beneficiaros de temáticas que normalmente no estaríais impartiendo en vuestros programas universitarios, ¿no? Y en ese sentido, recordaros que para aquellos que queráis seguirnos en este viaje, que es Aula Árabe Universitaria, y bueno, como prueba de la experiencia adquirida en este periplo, bueno, pues al final del curso os damos un certificado de Aula Árabe Universitaria y para eso tenéis que registrar, bueno, tenéis que registrar vuestra asistencia a más del 40% de las conferencias, que son en total 7, y de esas 7, 2 pueden ser del programa de Aula Mediterránea, del Instituto Europeo del Mediterráneo, con quien estamos hermanados y al que los podéis conectar online. Con lo cual, bueno, pues que lo sepáis si os interesa también seguir el programa de Aula Mediterránea. Y, bueno, y recordad también que los que sois estudiantes de programas de aquí de la Comunidad de Madrid, sí que se os exige que la asistencia sea presencial. Y para ello tenéis que registrar la asistencia en el pasaporte al mundo árabe que os entregamos en la entrada y que ya tenéis a muchos de vosotros. ¿Vale? Y nada, con esto el resto de los estudiantes que os conozcáis de universidades de fuera de Madrid o del programa de Aula Mediterránea, podéis registraros en el canal, en el formulario que aparece en el chat del canal de Casa Árabe en YouTube, por el que se está retransmitiendo esta conferencia, y también a través del chat podéis trasladarnos si tenéis alguna pregunta luego para el debate que yo trasladaré a Sébastien Abis. Y nada, sin más, muchísimas gracias a todos y a todas por acompañarnos de nuevo. Y nada, Barak, cuando quieras, si quieres presentar a...
Estupendo. Muchas gracias, Olivia, y buenas tardes a todas y a todos. Antes de todo, agradecer a Casa Árabe por esta colaboración que seguimos juntos desde hace años y que de verdad cada vez es un placer no solo tener a nuevos ponentes, sino también aprender tanto sobre estos temas de una región que se queda estratégica, que se queda siempre en las noticias como lo sabemos y como lo vemos. Por una parte, también, bueno, presentar de manera muy breve nuestro máster igual en Ciencias Políticas y Asuntos Públicos. Somos una universidad americana basada en Madrid. Llevamos casi 60 años ahora en Madrid, aunque la sede está en Missouri, en Estados Unidos. Y tenéis aquí unos representantes también. Hay una fila aquí con estudiantes del máster de Ciencias Políticas, así como estudiantes de graduado también que han venido para esta conferencia. Lo digo también porque igual es una oportunidad también para vosotros de varios máster, de igual después de la conferencia hablar, conoceros uno al otro. Hablan todos español, así que no hay ningún problema y seguro que habláis todos inglés. Y en cuanto al máster, está enfocado sobre la noción de crisis, las crisis de manera general y, por supuesto, lo que va a hablar Sebastián hoy es un tema relacionado con algo fundamental que igual hemos descubierto hace casi 3 años, que nuestra harina o nuestro pan dependía de Ucrania. No sé, es lo que se dijo en aquella época, pero seguro que más allá de Oriente Medio hay temas que va a hablar también Sebastián que son de muy gran importancia en cuanto a la noción de crisis y de los asuntos estratégicos contemporáneos. Y si no, para no monopolizar la palabra, pero igual decir de manera muy breve que ya que estamos hablando de máster y lo que se hace en máster, no os va a importar mi vida personal, pero voy a decir una anécdota o a contar una anécdota rápida. Es que hace ahora un poco más de 20 años, había dado mi primera clase de ciencias políticas en un máster de ciencias políticas que era en la ciudad de Lille, que estaba en el norte de Francia, que está en el norte de Francia, el Instituto de Sciences Po, que es el Instituto de Estudios Políticos ahí. Y ahí me acuerdo que había un grupo de 10, 12 estudiantes y dentro de ellos destacó un estudiante que participaba mucho, conocía muchas cosas, hasta me ha hablado de un TFM que era muy interesante y este estudiante luego pues se graduó, entró en una carrera profesional y hemos mantenido el contacto y no solo le he encontrado en muchos lugares, sino que él, cada lugar donde ha trabajado me invitaba y a través de esta persona, la verdad es que he conocido a mucha gente, he hecho una red, una parte de mi red la debo a esta persona a nivel de un centro intergubernamental especializado sobre los asuntos agrícolas o de agricultura. Ahí había muchas reuniones que se organizaban. Luego un foro que se llama, que conoces bien, Olivia, la Asamblea de Ciudadanos y Ciudadanas del Mediterráneo también, donde pues eso, me han involucrado y he formado parte de esta red. Revistas por aquí, oportunidades por ahí. Bueno, esta persona de la cual estoy hablando es Sébastien, en realidad, que ha sido estudiante en la primera clase que he dado en mi vida, en mi currículo académico o mi currículo a nivel de universidad. Y que además, para los que no los de vosotros que no lo conocéis, también está trabajando en el centro de investigación donde yo he trabajado durante 10 años en París. La diferencia es que él acabó una figura mediática conocida que le invitan por cada parte en Francia para comentar muchos asuntos estratégicos que incluyen, por supuesto, a este desafío principal que tenemos hoy, que está relacionado con la alimentación y la seguridad alimentaria. Así que nada más, muchas gracias por estar con nosotros, Sebastián. Es un privilegio, un honor y un placer volver a verte también. Y claro que vamos a aprender mucho de ti hoy y a tener muchas preguntas también que hacerte. Muchas gracias otra vez.
Gracias. Thank you. It's okay. Oh, buenas tardes a todos. I will speak English. So thank you for the invitation. Thank you, Bara, for the words. Yes, 20 years ago, I was not aware about the importance of agriculture and food issues. I was student in science, political science, geopolitics. I was involved in, my first job was in the French army. And then I worked for business and different private sectors in the Mediterranean cooperation. So I have no family in agricultural sector. And I was not aware about the power of food. So I was just a consumer. And we are all consumers. And for the first time in the history, we have a record, a huge number of consumers in the planet. So I would like to introduce the issue by explaining the big picture in terms of foresight challenges for agriculture and food. Then explaining a little bit the agro-food race and the competition between different countries in terms of food and agricultural power. And then talking a little bit about North African and Middle East countries. Okay? My English is not so good. I know that some of you are from US, right? So, as you know, in the European Union, we don't have English as official language since the Brexit. So talking in English inside the European Union is geopolitically a paradox now. Let me just put this remark on the table. So quick comment and then your question and a dialogue between us. It will be my pleasure to reply to your request. So the agro-food Everest first. We have to understand the historical moment as we have for the first time to understand that security is still a food dimension challenges. We need to have food in a daily basis, and this is a universal needs. So we don't have the possibility to avoid the food issue for all the people, and this is not a new topic. It's a very old topic. And so we have to understand that for the first time, with 8 billion people, the importance of agriculture and fisheries is more than ever important. This is an old sector. This is an old activity. This is an old issue. But for the first time, we need to produce more and to put more people in food security. And the challenges is not behind us. We have to consider that the demographic growth still very important at global level. So for the first time of the history, this century is very particular because we have for the first time a lot of people with a very old issue. We need to have food in order to have the basic needs in order to live and to have the possibility to develop in the different manner. But we have this situation in terms of demographic situation. You know this, but you have to always keep in mind that food is very linked to the demographic aspect. Then sustainability. So let me just be clear about the fact that without food, no life, no stability, no development. Huh? It's clear for you. So food insecurity always means instability, social instability, sometimes unrest, sometimes changes in terms of stability of governments, and so on and so on. So we need to have food for personal reason, but also for collective development. Then sustainability. For the first time, we have to produce more food and to produce more nature or to produce more biodiversity and to produce more food with less resources. So the Everest is very clear. We need to increase food security for food aspect and human development and human security, but we need to accelerate in terms of the decrease of carbon footprints and the use of resources. Food demands still growing, but we need to regenerating nature, okay? And we have the water stress. We need to have water for food production. So water stress is a major game changer for food production. We don't have more water, but we need to produce more food with the same amount of water. And 8 billion people. And 100 billion animals. They use food and they use water. Okay? So the competition for resources and the competition for food is more and more important. Then we need to have land, arable land. And we don't have a lot of arable land in the world. In this map, you have in green the arable land active each year in the planet. So we are talking about a small part of emerging part of the lands, okay? This amount of active agricultural land, if we aggregate all these agricultural land, the size is the size of Australia. So with the size of Australia, we are producing the food of the world. So the challenges is more and more important, but the resources we need to produce food, water, land, we don't have more resources. And we have to understand that climate change is increasing inequalities in terms of agricultural power and food security in the world. So climate change is increasing the interdependencies in the world. But we are talking about food sovereignty, food for each, and not food for all, or cooperation and international solidarity in terms of food. So climate change is an additional game changer for the very basic need of having food in the world. Produce food now is more complex than ever. It's very complicated to produce food now in the world. So we need to understand that two-thirds of the world population will be within this black circle, okay? In this map, this is the map of climate change IPCC experts. After 2050, in red, we will lose food production. The yields will decrease. In this circle, we will have 6 billion people. So we are talking not about the long-term situation. We are talking about 2050. So 25 years, okay? We are more closer to 2050 than 2000 now. So this situation is geopolitically very complex because some countries are investing techno-solutionism, high-tech, and geoengineering in order to stall some clouds to the neighborhoods in order to have rainfall in the country, in order to have water for food production, in order to maintain agricultural production within the territories and within the borders. And many people in this situation, without techno-solutionism, without the power, the military power to change artificially the climate situation, distress migration will increase, for sure. It will not be possible to live with 50 degrees during 8 months in water stress, in food insecurity, if you add also socio-political instabilities. That's why maybe Donald Trump has right in order to invest Greenland. Greenland will probably be the country that will have the most important demographic growth in this century. Because at the end of this century, being in Greenland will be better to be in some part of the world. So Donald is very smart. In Greenland, you have 10% of world water resources. In Greenland, you have a lot of critical materials. You have also sand. Sand is a strategic material now. The major part of the sand in the world is in Greenland. So we have to consider that Greenland issue is a very important topic. It's not just a joke like this in order to avoid some different discussion and dialogue in the international relation. So climate change is pushing the agricultural issues at the center of international relation. Climate change is a major booster for agricultural and food issue in the next decades. For you, for your research, for your future works, and for your life, you will have to consider food and agriculture as a key sector. You need food, but you need farmers. You need producers. You need production. You need climate change solution. You need climate change adaptation. You need to storage water, no food. Without water, no food. Without no food, no stability, no life. This is the big changer for everyone. For each of us, the food issue is the same challenges. But for the food issue now, the battle is very, very active. So sustainability, and we need to have an exit from oil economy and to reintroduce bioeconomy. And bioeconomy, the major supplier of bioeconomy is agricultural production. Agriculture for biofuels. Agriculture and agricultural production in order to invent new materials, new buildings. So agriculture is not only the food issue, it's the exit of oil economy. So we have a growing competition between food and non-food uses of agricultural production. So we don't have just the battle between the countries, between the consumers, between the farmers. We have also a strong battle, an agro-food race between food production and non-food production coming from agricultural production. Then we have the third very important topic, security, sustainability, and health issue. Food is health. If you don't have food secure, safety food, the healthy situation for each of us is very different. And health issues, we have to understand that, for example, if you don't have a very good food supply and diversity in the first years of your life, you lost capacity in terms of IQ development, in terms of ability, skills, and so on. So if we want to have a better world tomorrow, a more smart community in the world, we need to have more food for all the person. If not, artificial intelligence for sure will be more smart than human. If we want to have smart people, we have to nourish the planet and these people. So food for young people is strategic for the rest of the life. And food all along the life is vital for you. This is the best investment in terms of life expectancy. This is the best solution in order to stay in a healthy situation. That's why all the health investment, innovation, tools, research, development, program, the link between food and health is more and more important. And we have to understand that we have one health: animal health, plant health, soil health, and human health. One health system, as the COVID has clearly indicated in the recent years. So we need to protect all the system. We need to invest to have more safety food, more sustainable agricultural land, and we need to protect all the animals in this planet. If we don't have good livestock, if we have more and more disease, animal disease, like COVID, like Zika, like Ebola, like AIDS, we will have more human insecurities. So we need to understand that the challenges in this century, this Everest, is not just the security aspect. It's not just the climate change and sustainability challenges. It's also all the issues around the health and One Health challenges. And we have some game changer. Maybe the US students are more familiar than European one about the new drugs like Ozempic or Wegovy. You know, these drugs able to reduce obesity, overweight, but this is not food. In terms of food power as strong tool for human and social relation, this is clearly a game changer. And this is drugs for the moment. This is drugs for patients and persons that are in obesity. This is not products for each of us. This is medical solution. And we have a very strange situation in the ongoing process because Wegovy and Ozempic, the major part of the users are not concerned by obesity. Many people use Wegovy and Ozempic in order to reduce the carbon footprints, for example, to reduce food consumption, and to change the appearance. This is a game changer. You can lose 20% of your weight in 1 year. The cost is very huge. In Europe, you need to have an ordonnance, a recipe, but you can find in Europe, in America, in China, this solution in the black markets. When we have for Biden products, it's very simple to find these products. Prohibition in the US 1 century ago, a lot of alcohol consumption during this period. In Tehran, in Iran, a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohols behind the scene. This is a game changer because the amount of food calories we need each day is changing by this solution. So some person are explaining that maybe thanks to these drugs, the food issue in this century is very different. We don't need to produce more. Thanks to these drugs, maybe we are producing enough because we have to eat less. And we will eat less thanks to these drugs. The company, the Danish company producing these drugs, is the most important European companies now in terms of capital markets. This is the first European companies. In 2 years, they have changed the GDP of Denmark. They have changed some food recipes. Many agro-food companies are introducing Wegovy and Ozempic in the products. So let me introduce a little bit this game changer because geopolitically, it will have maybe a huge impact, especially because we don't know the impact for human health. This is drugs for persons that are in overweight or obesity. If you take these drugs and you are not concerned about these challenges, the impacts for the moment is unknown. We don't have the sufficient knowledge about the impact of Wegovy, and Ozempic. So security, sustainability, and health. So we have to climb the Everest because we need to have more oxygen at the end of the century. We need to produce more food with less. We need to accelerate ecological transition. And if we want to have oxygen at the end of the century in order to come back from the Everest, we need to put more people than ever at the top level of the world in terms of human security. So the road is very complex. And in order to climb the Everest, the food Everest, we need to have more security, more sustainability, and more health. Security, universal issue. Sustainability, we agree about the importance of sustainability. There is no debate. And health is important for each of us. If we want to talk about agriculture and food issue, we need to talk about just 3 very simple things. We want to be in security. We want to have more sustainability tomorrow. And we need to have health. This is the agricultural and food story. And during this century, the challenges is more huge than ever. So the agro-food race is the consequences of the challenges. No country is going back to agriculture and food production and security investment. So we have a lot of countries investing in food sector, all the BRICS, China, for sure. And China, for example, for food security, is investing logistics, international markets, science, research, geoengineering, biotechnology, new breeding techniques in order to have some varieties able to resist to water stress. China is able to invest in terms of robotics, genetics, in terms of artificial intelligence in agriculture. Alibaba is very active in agriculture and food issue in China. The same for Tencent. We have the Indian challenges. Let me just remind you that in India, for the moment, we have more people than in Africa. In a superficie in the size of Congo Republic, in the size of a small Europe. India is a huge population in a small country with climate change, with very, very turbulent neighborhoods, with a challenge with China. India has double the middle-class consumers in the last 20 years. So Indian people are consuming more than ever. And they are still asking for more food, more secure food, more diversity. So the Indian challenges will be very, very high, more complex than in China, because India is not China. China is very clear. We need to have more food at home, and we need to buy food in the international markets. India is a mess. And they are trying to avoid the unmanageable situation. So adaptation in India. Then we have Brazil, the farm of the world. And Brazil now would like to be the supermarket of the world. So to transform, to have more agro-food industry in the Brazilian territory, not just to produce agricultural food and to export in the international markets, to China, to African countries, to Middle East, sometimes to Argentina, sometimes to US, sometimes to Europe. But Lula is very clear. The big market for agribusiness in Brazil is China. Then China. Third, China. Emirates are investing a lot in agro-food business in Brazil. Saudi Arabia is pushing a lot of money in the agribusiness sector in Brazil. China is very active in terms of logistics in order to take the food production and have this road, have this logistic able to go to the ports and going then to the international markets by the seas, by the ocean, and having the amount of food needs in China, okay? But let me introduce a game changer. Brazil is also concerned by the climate change issue. We will have the COP30 this year in Brazil, you know. It's not sure that Brazil will still be the very big players in terms of agri-food exports. Maybe Brazil will have some challenges in terms of food production tomorrow. Maybe Brazil will need to export first, not to China, not in the international markets, but in South American countries, because regional stability, regional solidarity, neighborhoods first. And maybe Brazil will develop a narrative explaining that for ecological reasons, Brazil first. So less food and agricultural production in Brazil in order to be very, very clear in terms of impact for climate and the restoration of nature, the protection of Amazonia. So maybe Brazil, after 2030, will not be a big player in the international market. Without Brazil now, in the agri-food markets, we have a problem. Not Houston, we have a problem. Agro-food planet, there is no Brazil for production. And first, maybe we don't have Brazilian exports. We have a problem. Ukraine, breadbasket of the world. Since the antiquity, Athens, the democracy of Athens, no food in Athens. Thalassocracy. The power of Athens, the democracy of Athens, the power of Athens in terms of economy, military power, the seafood, the sea power of Athens, the objective was very clear. To have the capacity to take the grain production from Ukrainian areas, Black Sea region, and to have this transport, the sea transport, until the Piraeus ports in the Mediterranean. Ukraine is a huge producer of food because they have the very rich arable lands. The name in English is black soils. And the country is very rich in terms of arable lands. Ukraine and Russia, since the beginning of the century, have invested a lot in terms of agricultural production in order of reinforce the economy, the national economy, and in order to export more food and more agricultural products in the global markets. So Black Sea region is strategic now for world food security. So the conflict between Russia and Ukraine is not a good news. This is not a good game changer for the world food security. And as Bara mentioned, a lot of grain, a lot of sunflower oil are coming from this region. So this conflict is an additional difficulty in terms of world food security. And Russia is using the food power as a weapon. The weaponization of international relations. You can take the food challenges and the strategy of Russia. This is a very clear illustration. A lot of countries refuse to commend the war in Ukraine in order to avoid a disruption in terms of food grain corridors coming from Russia for their needs. A lot of African countries like this. All the Middle Eastern countries like this. Russia now is exporting one third of wheat in the world. So we are talking about bread, pasta, semolina. So if we are very clear about the situation, no Brazil, no Russia, we have a huge food insecurity in the world. So geopolitically, it's very complex because if we are not aware about this food sensitiveness with these very particular countries, we cannot understand some international negotiation, trade, dialogue, or will to avoid a direct war between the countries. And then we have also the US. Very important agro-food power since more than 1 century. And let me just remind the very strategic approach of US about the importance of agriculture and food. We know the Roosevelt plan, the New Deal. The New Deal, the major part of the New Deal is the Farm Bill. 1 century ago, the relaunch of the US economy is a relaunch of agricultural production. The Farm Bill, this is always the name of the US agricultural policy. The common agricultural policy we have in Europe, in US, this is the Farm Bill. The Farm Bill is the major part of the New Deal of Roosevelt. And then agricultural production in US have always been a very important soft power in the world, in terms of diplomacy, in terms of cooperation, in terms of solidarity, in terms of humanitarian aid. But the country now is in a very particular situation. California, 1/4 of food and vegetable in the US. 30% of milk production in the US. And there is no water in California. Second situation, immigrant workers in agricultural farms. Without immigrants, there is no food production in the US. And there is less people in the agro-food industry. Let me be very clear about this. We have the same situation in Europe. In Europe, without immigrants, without migrants people in the agro-food industry, we are losing the production. We are losing workers. we are losing knowledge about agricultural production. Traditional knowledge. This is very complex to be farmers. A lot of European persons, a lot of persons in US are not able to be farmers, are not able to be concrete, to work in the primary or second sector. We are, like me, unable to do something in terms of production. In the upcoming world, I'm not comfortable. I would like to be farmer. If you don't have food, very complex. If you want to combat climate change, you have to be farmer. Because if you change the food system, the agricultural production, the impact for climate change and biodiversity is very huge. I can talk about climate change, but I do nothing in comparison with a farmer. I can try to avoid water dispersion and losses. I can try to avoid to take my car in order to go to my office, but the impact is very low. So the farmers in the world are the big players. And now in the US, the new narrative is very clear about the importance of agriculture and food production. This is important for security at home, security at international level, and agriculture is also a very important sector for clean industry, for climate change, and some solution with the new economy we have to invent. So let me also explain the situation about the paradox in Europe. We want to have more industry in Europe. But a lot of strategic industry, since 3 years, the new industrialization of Europe, the development is in the US. So the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, is not an inflation tool instrument. It's a competitiveness tool for clean industry and strategic production in the US. So I'm not talking about a decline of US power in agriculture and food. This is the situation in Europe. We are losing food power in Europe. We are losing food production and science and knowledge and innovation in Europe. US are investing a lot, like China, like Brazil, like the major part of the world. And we have all these players very active in agriculture and food. Just we don't have just the nation and the states. Huh? Private companies, they want to change the world and have a daily impact for people. They are investing in food and agriculture. We have different vision about the world map. You know, if you are US students, we have this European map, very comfortable. We are at the center. This is good for us. We are comfortable. We are convinced to be at the core of the world. This is the real map of the world. Europe is a periphery. And this is a real map, huh? But Europe is not at the center. Talking about the Mediterranean, area. This is very complex, the Mediterranean area. Are we like some fish in a bocal, the aquarium? Or is the Mediterranean an open space? In this open space, more people in the southern shore. Huge change in terms of demographic situation in the Mediterranean area. In 50 years, a shift. More people, and so more people to be nourished in North Africa and in the Middle East countries. The importance of agriculture in the Mediterranean economy and societies. For European Mediterranean countries, for Balkans countries, for North African countries and the Middle Eastern countries. The importance of agriculture in the economy is very, very huge. But we don't have arable land to develop tomorrow. In the Mediterranean area, it's very clear. There is no reserve of arable lands. So we need to produce in the same land than today. So we need to produce better in the same areas of today. And some arable lands of today are not in good ecological situation. So we have a problem. And we have the water stress in the Mediterranean region. The same global topic is more important in this region because the lack of water is the Mediterranean specialty. Spain, very clear situation. Very important agricultural sector, very ambitious agro-food economy, but the water issue is not an agricultural one, it's a political issue in Spain. And the experience of Spain in water use, water consumption, desalinization, is very important for all the European countries. We have a strong water issue in the Mediterranean. Talking about Israel, talking about the conflict in the Middle East, the water issue is very central. The water issue is very central to understand the rivalries, to understand the competition, to understand social competition between users, between rural communities and urban people. And we have to understand that in Africa, we have in Africa, in the Middle East, a huge inequality between cities and rural territories. And this is not just a social division. It's becoming a political issue. It's true in Spain. It's very clear in the Syrian unrest 15 years ago. This is the major difference between Egypt in the Nile corridor and the rest of the country. This is the same issue in the US. This is the same issue in China. This is the main important division in the world for me. Not the West and the rest, democracy and authoritarianism, the North, the South, the BRICS, the European Union, the US and the rest. No. Big cities and the others. In rural areas, the main activity is agriculture. That that is very important for you to understand that in the agri-food race, a lot of countries are investing in terms of agricultural activity and sector in order to control and maintain control in rural territories. So the investment in terms of agriculture is not just the food issue, it's also a political issue. We need to control the rural territories and control the countries. So let me finish about some example. The Turkish power in terms of agro-food industry, very huge power. Investing in logistics, Turkish Airlines, not just for soccer and Champions Leagues. Turkish Airlines, half of the airplanes are Turkish cargo. Turkish cargo, half of the food, the stuff are food stuff. Turkish is able to export a lot of agro-food production in Africa and Middle East now. Pasta, flour, wheat, bakeries, milk production, yogurts, and so on. Let me finish with Saudi Arabia. No water, no agricultural land, a lot of money coming from the petrol, from oil. In Europe, we are buying the oil and the gas in the Middle East, and we are financing the ecological transition of these countries. And we are facilitating the transition of these countries in some strategic activities. This country, 35 million inhabitants, they have to work now. This country has a huge ambition in terms of tourism, in terms of halal food production coming from Mecca region. And Saudi Arabia is investing a lot of money now in terms of high-tech agro-food production. I was in Jeddah 10 years ago. The University of Kaost in Jeddah is among the third most important university in the world now in terms of how artificial intelligence is able to invent the food and the agriculture of the future. A lot of students coming from US, Asian countries, Brazil. So this is important to understand that you can have no water, no land, no farmers, but you can have a huge ambition with agriculture and food. This is an example, and we have a lot of other examples in the region. So I conclude on this, and sorry for my English. I hope that it was clear that you have to be farmers tomorrow if you want to save the world or to save yourself. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias, Sebastián, por esta conferencia tan holística. De alguna forma, yo creo que ha conectado muy bien distintos aspectos que se tratan en los distintos másters, porque está el tema geopolítico, tema económico, social también. Ángel, ¿tenías un primer comentario? No, una primera pregunta. Bueno, si quieres.
I'm going to English because he has made the effort to speak in English. I will speak in English too. No, I am worthless because it's so impressive, so excellent exposition of the whole problem. So So I will ask you only to elaborate a bit more on the problem of the water stress, because it's not only the Mediterranean. The same happened in China, same happened in India, because the snowfalls in the Himalayas are decreasing a lot. No snowfalls in the Himalaya means no water in China and no water in India, and they are more than 40% of the world's population, more or less. Same happened in Europe. The snowfalls in the Alps are decreasing. There is the same water level in the Rhine River and in the Rhone. So once again, we have a problem not only in the driest part of Europe, but also in the northern part of Europe. Here in Spain, the rivers in the last 2 decades has lost, I guess, 10% of the water flow. So it's very critical for us, because no enough water in the rivers means no enough water in the dams, and with no water in the dams, there is no possibility of irrigation. So we have to reapproach it, but the same happened, and I think the big problem will be in Africa, because in Africa, the borderlands of the Sahara Desert, not only in the north, in North Africa, but in the southern side, in Mali, in Niger, there will be a huge demographic explosion and less water than 10 years ago. So do you think this will be a geopolitical problem for the whole Eurasia? And do you think that America could escape from this water stress? I have many more questions, but I just focus on one.
Water stress is very interesting, because we have to, if we want to think about the future, we have to invent a lot of solutions concerning water stress. Because if we don't have the capacity to have more water tomorrow available, we will have a strong problem. And we have to understand that the water issue, first of all, is a food issue. 80% of water in the world is used for food production. So if we want to have more water tomorrow, we have to avoid to lose water in the food sector. We have to avoid to have water losses in the agricultural sector. So the additional water we can find tomorrow is the water we are not losing in the agricultural sector. This is very important, because we need to have more engineers, more innovation, more storage, more logistics. So we have to understand also that the dams, the storage of water is not just to have a good swim pool for summer, for tourism. If we are able to have a very smart water storage, this is an additional solution for food security at global situation. So we need to invent a lot of solutions. And then we have to understand that the water stress will be tomorrow more important than today. So we need to prepare the situation, because in terms of international relation, if we are not able to put water at the center in order to avoid a global mess, we will have local wars. And Bara is very, very expert in terms of water conflicts. The water conflicts in the world now, this is not between nations. This is between users, local use of water. I was very impressed in Iran 5 years ago. I was in Iran during 2 weeks. The lack of water in Iran is the major bomb in this country. There is no water in Iran. And there is, each day, we have a lot of battle between users in Iran for waters, between the farmers, between farmers and the local communities, between the people they want to have water for industry, for services, at home, and there is no water in Iran. And the Chinese problem for water, if we are not able to understand that China is investing the polar, the Arctic for the water issue, this is not for business road. This is not for ecological reason. They are looking for water.
Fully agree.
They are looking for water. Himalaya, you mentioned Himalaya. This is not for Dalai Lama and religion aspect and so on. Because this is the water storage in the region. So water issue is very important, and as consumers, this is very important to understand that if we are very aware about the importance of water, we cannot forget that the first contribution of water is to produce food today. Because the first food you eat is water. We have 3 minutes in the world if we want to have air fresh, oxygen. Water, without water, 3 days. Without food, 2 or 3 weeks. So water is the first food in the world. And in terms of geopolitics, in terms of innovation, in terms of science, in terms of climate change adaptation, water will be more and more central. So we need to help the farmers to have solutions in order to maintain water for food production, but we need to help all the farmers in the world to manage water resources and to have more economy of water in the sector. If we are not able to invent more solutions in the agricultural sector for water management, the world water issue will be very, very complex. So thinking about agriculture as very strategic sector for the future, this is not just the food security and the food consumption and so on. This is the water issue, for example. So we have to invent a new farming system able to produce with less water, and we need to find more water in the agricultural sector.
Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Sebastián. Creo que tenemos algunas preguntas por aquí. Yo también tenía algunas, pero vamos a dejar el espacio para los estudiantes y las personas en la sala. ¿Tenéis alguna pregunta? ¿Algo que queráis trasladar? Sí, allí al fondo, por favor.
In the general aspect, what measures do you think that the European Union, the Commission, could take to increase Europe agro-food power? And in the specific case, what do you think about the treaty with Mercosur about the free commerce?
So first of all, maybe in Europe, we have to understand that we have a huge power in terms of agricultural production because a lot of diversity. We are able to produce a large part of agricultural products and with high level quality, sanitary process, sustainability rules, and so on. So the level of agriculture and food production in Europe is very high. The problem in Europe is that we are losing confidence with farmers. So we are explaining that farmers are responsible for environmental issues. We are explaining that we need to have less farmers tomorrow to have a better planet. This is a paradox. Agriculture has always been the core of European construction. You know this. This is the major European common policy. 1/3 of European budget, still today. And we have to be more confident with farmers, and we have to be more coherent in terms of international relations, especially in terms of trade. Because if in Europe you have a system avoiding to the farmers to produce like this, with this solution, with these techniques, with this science, and you are opening the markets for consumers, for European consumers, with agricultural products and food products coming from the world, with a level of standards very low in comparison to the European Union. I'm not saying that the production in Brazil, in US, in China, in India, in Nigeria is not good. They are all developing the standards. The issue now for farmers, the explanation of the tension between farmers and European politics and some consumers is about the fact that we are avoiding, we are not supporting some agricultural production in Europe, and we open the markets in terms of international trade, and some products coming from the world are entering in the Euro market without the norms and the standards we put to the European farmers. So we have a disruption. We have a disconnection between the rules here for farmers and the trade. So the Mercosur deal, the problem is not the deal. The problem is not the Mercosur countries. The problem is the coherence between what we are asking to the European farmers and what we are maintaining in terms of agro-food markets entering in the European single market. This is not the debate about the quality of the others. The problem is the unfair competition between European standards for farmers and the global standards. This is the Mercosur issue. But you know that we have a beautiful love story between Ursula and we have a huge debate about the fact that European Commission is not very clear about the mandate they have for the agreement with Mercosur. And I know that in Spain, the farmers in France, in Germany, Netherlands, are against the Mercosur deal because this is an unfair deal because the standards and the rules are not the same. And the cost of production in South America is lower than in Europe. So European food products, the cost is higher. So the consumers here in Europe have to understand that if we want to consume European food production, the cost is higher, for sure, because we are paying sustainability, because we are paying the workers, because we are paying all the social aspects in our system in Europe, and maybe this is not the universal system, but this is the system in Europe. So the debate is also about consumers. Are we able to consume European food production? If not, we have to clearly maintain some competitive production means and tools for the farmers too in Europe. If not, we will lose all the farmers in Europe, for sure. And fishermen, because let me remind you that we are also eating a little bit seafood production, and we are always talking about food security, talking about agriculture, fisheries, aquaculture are very strategic sector. And just to be clear on the geopolitical situation, half of seafood products now are Chinese seafood products. We can talk about chips for artificial intelligence, but we can talk about seafood products, and the power is in the end of China.
Tenemos 3 preguntas más aquí, si queréis ir en... Sí.
So my question is if you think that a better way to guarantee food security is to create like a supranational legal framework to control the food and water share between countries and avoid problems like rain stealing and all that in the future.
J'ai pas tout bien entendu.
Sí.
J'ai-
¿Puedes repetirlo? Que no,
la-
Simplemente repítelo. Yo creo que es que no he oído bien. No se oía bien.
Okay.
Recoge.
So my question,
Are you Spanish?
yeah.
Hablamos un poquito español.
Si no en francés.
Ah. Ah, okay. No, but I was not able to understand the question.
So if you think that a better way to guarantee food security is by creating a supranational legal framework to control water and food share between countries and avoid future problems like rain stealing or things like that.
Non, j'ai pas entendu. Ouais.
C'est une plateforme légale internationale pour garantir la sécurité de l'agriculture, la sécurité de l'approvisionnement.
Yes, in a beautiful world, yes, but we are not in a beautiful world. So you're right, because personally, I'm convinced that if we want to invent a better world, we need to invest in the very universal, long-term, strategic, common challenges like the food issue, because the inequalities are very huge. So if we want to have a de-risking approach, we need to invest in this, and we have to cooperate. We need to have more international relation, more solidarity, more knowledge sharing, more science-based knowledge, and so on. But you know that international relation, they are not friendship relation. But this is the paradox, because if we want to have a new friend or a boyfriend, or if you want to take time with your family, the best solution is to share a plate and to go to the restaurant. And maybe you want to invent a new moment around food. The power of food is to create social interlinkage more than all the other human tools we have. The paradox is that the war, the rivalries, the competition for food is the mirror, the opposite mirror of the power of food. Without food, this is a mess. But thanks to food, your life is better, and thanks to food, you can talk with your friend. Thanks to food, you can have a very good relation with a person. And sometimes you don't know the person, but you would like to know the person and to spend time with the person. Okay, let's go to the restaurant. Let's go to lunch. The power of food is this. The power of food in terms of diversity, intercultural dialogue, the power of food in terms of social, the soft power of food is very important. The food diplomacy too. So the paradox is we have the most important tool for human security and human dialogue and solidarity. And this very important tool, some, not all, some person and some stakeholders are using the power of food as a weapon. This is the situation. And let me just remind that after the Second World War, the first UN agency we established was the FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization. This is the first UN agency established after the World War II.
All right, so my question would go more to the concrete side of things, and I'd particularly like to ask you about France, because it has such diverse climates inside of its territory. So with the areas in the south getting more dry, one of these solutions would be to desalinate water. But in the north, where there are more and more rains persistently, how can we tackle the change in agricultural yields in those areas?
Yes, thank you for the demand. In France, we have a... Okay, another issue? Okay.
Hello. I was going to ask two questions, but I think with time, I'll just ask one. Save my peers some time. Okay. No, it's not on you, Joe. It's okay. Si vous voulez en français, c'est pas un problème aussi. To what extent do you see resource allocation as a problem of food insecurity instead of, like producing more food, since food insecurity has been a problem since before climate change became into the global mainstream, so to speak? My second question really quickly is also, to what extent do you see non-indigenous food production as a strain on local environment, i.e. food production and water, like environmental productivity? But,
and
okay.
Thank you for the remarks and the demands. And if for example in France, like all the countries, we don't have an homogeneous situation in terms of agricultural production, the same production, the same situation in terms of water resources, land, and so on. So the diversity is very important. Climate change is increasing the disparities between the region in France and between the years. 2 years ago, in the north of France, we had a drought. And these years, a huge rainfall. And we are unable to store and to maintain this rainfall to use maybe next year for irrigation. And in the south of France, they need more water. So we are not able, at national level, to share water. And maybe we have to invent autoroute de l'eau.
Water highways.
Okay? So we have to think about something like this. And the Romanian Empire was able to develop aqueduct. So we have to think about the mobility of water too, not just the management of water issues. The mobility of water is important.
That doesn't work.
I know. This is the problem. This is the problem. This is very complex. This is very political sensitiveness. So in France, for example, what is the situation for the moment? Some agricultural production in the south are more and more produced in the north. For example, wine production in the south of France. We are developing a lot of wine production in the center and in the north of France. The same in Belgium. The same in UK now. In the south of France, we are developing more Mediterranean agricultural production, more tropical production, avocados, like Spain. So climate change is also establishing a new agricultural map at national level for France, but at global level too. Siberia in Russia will be a huge agricultural space of tomorrow. Maybe like Greenland, because climate change is developing more capabilities for these territories to be agricultural active. Okay? But talking about the situation between sustainability and security, what we want? Are we able to explain to half of the world that for sustainability and biodiversity, we need to maintain half of the world in food insecurity? Very complex. Geopolitically, it's very complex. If we want to maintain 1 billion people in food insecurity, 2 billion in moderate food insecurity. So we are talking about 3 billion people. And for them, the main topic is to find food and to have more food. Who decide to maintain this person in terms of food insecurity? This is, in terms of human development and human security, I'm not comfortable with the possibility to explain that a part of the world have to stay food insecure. But we have to understand too that some countries are food insecure because political instability, because a lack of confidence in the country. Many farmers in Africa explains to me, we are able to produce more. But if we are producing more, we will lose the production. Because a lot of persons would like to take our production and make money with this production. So I have to stay very discreet. I have to produce just enough for my family, for my village. So geopolitics is important to understand that if we don't have confidence, stability, good governance, good investment, long-term vision, we don't have agricultural development and food security. And if you have water stress, land scarcity, climate change, a lack of money, a lack of governance, and still a demographic growth, the situation is very complex. So you want to change the country and to avoid to stay in the country where you are. So I'm very green, but I know that to invest in the green, we need to avoid to be in the red, economically and geopolitically. If we want to invest in a greener world, to be better in terms of sustainable development and situation, we need to have a good economy. We need to have investment, sustainable investment, and we need to have stability, human stability, human confidence, good governance, and so on. This is the question. Are we able to cooperate or not? So sustainability for me is not something to, okay, this is the good sustainability for all the person. The situation is very different according to the country, the region, the continent, and so on. And we need to understand that sustainability is a strategic direction to invent a better situation tomorrow, not to stay as we are today or as we were before. This is not feasible to come back in the history. And I am sure that we are able to invent a better world if we are able to work on the good issue. We can talk about terrorism. We can talk about a lot of international issues. But if we are able to reduce food insecurity in the world, we will have a better world.
I think we can finish with that sentence. If we reduce food insecurity in the world, we'll have a better world. I think we will keep talking and discussing. We have many questions. I think we left it in the background, but I think it's time to finish. Muchas gracias de nuevo, Sebastián. Ha sido muy interesante. Con esto terminamos, que se nos ha hecho un poquito tarde. Muchas gracias a todos también por participar. Recordaros que seguimos la semana que viene, que hemos hablado, no hemos podido hablar mucho de soluciones y de futuro, pero bueno, para otra conferencia próximamente. Y sí que han mencionado el tema de la inteligencia artificial como una solución, entiendo, o en parte. La semana que viene hablaremos de la inteligencia artificial no como una solución, sino un problema. Vamos a hablar de la desinformación y la inteligencia artificial en Oriente Medio con Sayan Satarizadeh, que es un experto de BBC Verify. Así que os invito a venir. Será el miércoles 12 de febrero aquí a las 7 y nos vemos próximamente. Muchas gracias de nuevo a todos y muchas gracias, Sebastián. Ha sido muy interesante. Un aplauso.